In the spring of 2014, the Barrett family, Jerry, Mary, and their two children, finally found what they believed was their forever home. Nestled in the quaint suburban town of Westfield, New Jersey, the house was a beautiful colonial-style structure with white clapboard siding, a neatly trimmed lawn, and flower beds that promised colorful blooms come summer. It was everything the family had dreamed of after years of apartment living. A quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and excellent schools. The children, aged 8 and 10, were already imagining birthday parties in the spacious backyard, bike rides down the quiet cul-de-sac, and sleepovers with friends. Jerry and Mary envisioned peaceful evenings by the fireplace, dinner parties with neighbors, and a future filled with stability and happiness. But from the very moment they signed the papers and took possession, an unsettling atmosphere seemed to cling to the house. The previous owners had left in a hurry, leaving behind old newspapers, unopened mail, and a few personal belongings. A sense of abandonment lingered in the air. Still, the Barretts shrugged it off as just the residue of a hurried sale. One afternoon, just days before they planned to move in, Mary discovered an unmarked envelope slipped under the front door. Curious, she picked it up and unfolded the plain white paper inside. It was a typed letter, neatly formatted but unsigned. The message began with a chilling declaration. "Welcome to your new home. We have been watching you. We have watched all who came before you." The letter claimed to be from someone who had been observing the house and its occupants for decades, signing only as the Watcher. The tone was odd, part inquisitive, part ominous. The Watcher detailed things only an insider could know: the Barrett children's names, the times they were usually at school, even habits like Jerry's morning coffee ritual on the porch. From the first moment, the letter unsettled Mary deeply. She showed it to Jerry, who initially tried to dismiss it as a prank by an overzealous neighbor or an elaborate joke. But the more they read, the more the words sank in. The Watcher's tone was strangely calm, but carried an undeniable threat hidden between the lines. The letter described the house as if it were alive, a silent witness to decades of lives, secrets, and tragedies. It spoke of families who had come and gone, always watched, always observed. It hinted that the Barretts were just the latest chapter in the house's long and disturbing history. Even more chilling were the intimate details the letter included. Mary's habit of leaving the back door unlocked when carrying groceries inside, the children's names and school schedules, and Jerry's routine of sipping his morning coffee on the porch swing. How could a stranger know so much? That night, the family lay awake, each lost in thoughts of unseen eyes watching their every move. What began as a hopeful new beginning now felt like an intrusion of darkness into their lives. As the sun set behind the trees, the house seemed to grow colder, its shadows deeper, as if it were bracing itself for what was to come. The Barretts could no longer ignore the feeling that their home was being watched, not just by neighbors or strangers, but by something far more sinister lurking just beyond the veil of normalcy. Mary felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine as she read the letter's eerie warnings. It claimed the house was more than just a building. It was a vessel of dark secrets, a silent witness to tragedies and strange events that previous families never truly escaped from. The Watcher hinted that those families hadn't left by choice, that something unseen had forced them away, or worse. The letter urged the Barretts to be cautious, to watch their backs, and to remember that they were never truly alone within those walls. It ended with a chilling line that echoed in Mary's mind long after she folded the paper. "We are always watching. You cannot hide." The weight of those words settled heavily over the family, turning what should have been excitement into creeping dread. At first, the Barretts tried desperately to brush off the letters as the work of a cruel prankster, someone with too much time and a twisted sense of humor. But soon the letters kept arriving, each one more unsettling and detailed than the last. The watcher demonstrated an impossible knowledge of their lives, describing where the children played in the yard at certain times of day, the exact routes Jerry took on his morning jogs, and even how Mary sometimes forgot to lock the front door when bringing in groceries. Some details were so precise it was as if the watcher was inside the house with them, silently observing their every move. One letter even referenced a private conversation Mary had with a neighbor just hours earlier, words never spoken outside the yard, making it clear that the watcher was listening closely, always nearby, always watching. The letters also mentioned personal items still in boxes, objects the Barretts had not yet unpacked, adding an unnerving sense that the watcher was already inside the home, familiar with its contents before they had even settled in. Frightened and desperate for help, the Barrett family reached out to the Westfield police, hoping that law enforcement could bring an end to their nightmare. Officers arrived promptly, took detailed statements, and promised to investigate. But the reality was grim. Without fingerprints on the letters, a suspicious person caught in the act, or direct physical threats, the police's hands were tied. The letters themselves were carefully crafted, some typed on an old-fashioned typewriter, others printed from different computers, all seemingly designed to evade any kind of tracing or digital fingerprint. The police recommended installing security cameras around the property to catch whoever was delivering the letters. But when footage was reviewed, there was no sign of anyone approaching the house. At the times the letters had been slipped under the door, it was as if the watcher appeared and vanished like a ghost. Feeling increasingly vulnerable, the Barretts hired a private investigator to dig deeper. The investigator conducted thorough background checks on neighbors and conducted surveillance in the neighborhood, looking for anything unusual. Several neighbors reported strange phenomena: flickering street lights at odd hours, a shadowy figure glimpsed lurking near the property late at night, and faint, unexplained footsteps when the house was supposed to be empty. Whispered stories surfaced about the house's history, previous occupants who had abruptly moved away, unexplained tragedies, and rumors of strange happenings that no one wanted to discuss openly. The private investigator uncovered a disturbing pattern. Many families who had lived in the house before the Barretts had left under mysterious circumstances, their departures sudden and unexplainable. Yet despite the growing cloud of suspicion, no concrete evidence ever emerged to explain what was truly going on. As days bled into weeks, the Barrett family's life unraveled into a waking nightmare. Mary became increasingly protective, forbidding the children from playing outside, afraid that the watcher might be spying on them through windows or concealed cameras. The children, once lively and carefree, became withdrawn and fearful, terrified to be alone even in their own bedrooms. Jerry, who had always been the family's rock, spiraled into paranoia, constantly checking and double-checking doors and windows, questioning neighbors about any unfamiliar faces, and losing sleep over the growing threat. The once welcoming home became suffocating with an atmosphere thickened by dread, fear, and the invisible weight of being watched. One particularly harrowing night, Mary was jolted awake by faint scratching sounds at the front door. Her heart pounded in her chest as she cautiously pulled back the curtains, but all she saw were shifting shadows cast by the dim street lights outside. The next morning, she found yet another letter resting on the porch, this time handwritten in a messy, hurried cursive, the ink smudged as if the writer was trembling or eager to finish quickly. The message was far more sinister and direct than before. "We see everything. Your fear entertains us." The words sent a fresh wave of terror through the family, confirming their worst fears. They were not only being watched, but were now the source of twisted amusement for their tormentor. The Barretts were no longer the hopeful family that had purchased a dream home. They were prisoners of an unseen tormentor. Friends and relatives urged them to leave, but moving was complicated and expensive. Still, the family tried to carry on, maintaining the facade of normalcy while living in constant fear. Eventually, after months of relentless harassment that frayed their nerves and shattered their sense of security, the Barrett family reached a devastating conclusion. They could no longer stay in the home they had once dreamed of. With heavy hearts, they packed up what they could carry, leaving behind many cherished possessions that had become tainted by fear. They fled Westfield, hoping that putting miles between themselves and the house would finally break the Watchers' hold over their lives. But even as they settled into a new state, far from the place that had become their prison, the nightmare refused to end. Letters identical in tone and style to those they had received before continued to arrive, always postmarked from Westfield, as if the Watchers' gaze stretched beyond physical distance. The messages appeared with chilling regularity, each one a grim reminder that the Watchers' eyes were everywhere, that no place was truly safe, and that their tormentor's obsession was unyielding. The case soon attracted national attention, becoming a haunting headline that gripped the public imagination. Law enforcement agencies intensified their efforts. Surveillance cameras were installed near the house, postal routes were scrutinized, and every person connected to the Barretts or the property was questioned exhaustively. Yet despite these efforts, the Watcher remained a ghost, elusive and anonymous. No fingerprints, no sightings, no digital traces, only the unsettling letters and the aura of fear they carried. The house itself, once filled with hope and life, now stands empty and silent, its dark windows like hollow eyes watching the street. Locals steer clear of the property, speaking in hushed tones about curses, shadows, and the invisible presence that haunts the walls. The Watcher house has become a symbol of an unseen menace, a place where safety was shattered not by supernatural forces, but by the invasive gaze of an unknown stalker. The story of the Watcher house endures as a chilling testament to the horrors that can lurk in the most ordinary places, reminding us that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't spirits or demons, but real people whose obsessions invade the sanctity of home and family. The Barrett family's ordeal is a somber, cautionary tale about intrusion, paranoia, and the fragile boundary between feeling secure and being surveilled. And the Watcher? Their silent vigil continues, a shadow lurking just beyond the threshold, patiently waiting for the next family naive enough to call that house their home.